All right, picture this. I'm knee-deep in research for this documentary, about to meet Celina a Holocaust survivor. Now, I'm expecting a powerful story, sure, but what I didn't expect was the buzz around her neighborhood. As I'm about to enter her residence, her neighbor can't stop gushing about how Celina is the most wonderful woman. And you know what? After spending time with her, I couldn't agree more. Because Celina's story isn't just about survival, it's about resilience and kindness. So without any more rambling, meet Celina. Before the war, what did your early childhood look like?
Well, I was born in Poland, in Krakow. My early childhood was very nice. We lived in an area that was middle class. My parents were both accountants, and our life was very middle class too. I was 8 years old when the Germans invaded, so I had only finished second grade in school. Just before the war broke out, we noticed that the men would gather in the middle of the courtyard and talk about the impending possibility of war. And sure enough, on the 1st of September, after the Germans invaded, several of the men that were privy to these discussions and came down in the courtyard wearing armbands with a swastika on it. At that point, you realized that you couldn't trust anybody.
September 1st, 1939. German forces launched a surprise attack on Poland, officially marking the beginning of World War in Europe. Germany occupied Poland after only 35 days.
My parents were very disappointed, and of course, right away, there were all kinds of negative things happening to all of us. The schools were closed right away for everybody. Then shortly thereafter, they were reopened for the non-Jews, but the Jewish children were not permitted to go to school. We were told to wear armbands with the Star of David on them. And right away, people lost their jobs, they lost their bank accounts. Everything sort of changed. No longer governors, no longer privilege of any sort. A ghetto was established in a part of Krakow, and then little by little various areas were taken by the Germans to move the Jews out of there. So we were placed in the ghetto by 1940, and it meant moving from a nice apartment to a shared apartment with another family.
They used the formula of 4 people per window, often resulting in crowding 8 people into such rooms. Celina, her parents, and her aunt were assigned a room in the 2-room apartment.
Fear was the common, feeling, always fear, because we never knew what was going to happen in the ghetto either. My parents would go out, I would be there, but you never knew whether a selection would come or what the Germans were planning to do. There was a wall built around the ghetto with gates, and you had to have a permit to go out. Both my parents were accountants, and they continued working in German-occupied businesses. I was left in the ghetto because I didn't have the permit. I was not old enough to go outside.
To give additional context, we will be reading quotes from Celina's biography, Saved by Schindler.
One day, remembered as Bloody Thursday, left hundreds dead, as an eyewitness recounted. The ghetto resounds with shots, firing guns in the hands of soldiers. The Germans are shooting like crazy at anyone at reach, whoever they choose.
Celina survived because she had remained ill in bed that morning, but this event cemented to her parents that they could not leave her alone anymore.
I was 11 at that point, and my parents must have bribed somebody to change my age to 13, and so I received one of those blue cards or permits to leave the ghetto, and then I would leave them with my parents to go to that factory, and then I started working on a sewing machine.
How much of realities in did you
Well,
see while you're in the ghetto?
Once you are in a ghetto and you're being locked in, you begin to realize that everything that's happening to you is because you were Jewish. You never knew what was going to happen, you know. Then at the very end, when the ghetto was being liquidated, there was huge violence there perpetrated by the German army.
Throughout their time in the ghetto, Celina and her family worked for a very kind man named Julius Madridge, who would risk his life to smuggle medication, food, and anything else people needed. His goal was to save as many Jews as possible.
60% of my workers had no clue about tailoring. There were doctors, lawyers, engineers, merchants, etc., and their families working at my factory.
And he just so happened to have a good friend with a similar goal, named Oskar Schindler.
Oskar Schindler was a former member of the Nazi Party. He is celebrated for saving the lives of 1,200 Jews from the Holocaust by employing them in his factories.
When there was notion that the concentration camp was going to be closed or dissolved because the Russian army was coming into Poland and liberating Poland, Mr. Madridge realized that the war was about to be over, so he didn't want to get himself involved in it. So he said to Mr. Schindler he wasn't going to move his factory. So it was at that point that Mr. Schindler said to Mr. Madridge, well, then give me some of your people. I'm making a list of people I'm taking to my new factory.
Before getting to Schindler's factory, 300 women were first transferred to somewhere much more scary.
We traveled for about a day and a half, so we all thought that we would be entering, when the doors opened, we all thought we were in Czechoslovakia. It turned out that we weren't. We ended up in Auschwitz. We 300 women had no idea why we were in Auschwitz, but you know, it happened. And then we stayed in Auschwitz for over 5 weeks. Every so often, a barrack would be taken for selection. It just so happened that one day, my mother had volunteered to go and peel some potatoes because she thought she could bring some of the skins back so we could eat them, because we were very hungry. We didn't get enough food at all. And just so happens that that particular day, she and 30 other women from that particular barrack went to the kitchen. And that particular day, that barrack, my barrack, was called for selection. And so the selection took place in another barrack. The women had to strip completely naked, and you walked by Dr. Mengele with your body completely open so that he could look at it.
Joseph Mengele, known as the Angel of Death, served as a physician in Auschwitz. He performed horrifying and disgusting medical experiments on prisoners, particularly twins, while also selecting victims for gas chambers.
And at one point, he had a pencil in his hand, and the pencil would move one way or the other. And one way it was, on the left it was no good, on the right it was okay. And at first I was on the left because I was a kid. And then I don't know what happened to him, but he decided to take the group that he had originally sent on the left to go through again. And by the time I was in front of him again, that I said to him 3 words in German. I said, "Lassen Sie mich," which means let me go. It implies go in German. And this time he marked it to the right.
Through bribes and personal connections, Schindler was able to transfer the women out of Auschwitz.
We were then in the boxcars for 2 days traveling to Czechoslovakia. And when we got there and the doors opened up, we saw the men standing by the barbed wire. And that was the first time that we knew that they had made it, you know. And of course, they didn't really recognize us because we were all wearing the striped pajamas and our hair, so a lot of our women had their heads shaved. So we didn't really look like the people that they left, We all worked at various machineries in the factory, but Mr. Schindler decided at that point that nothing that left that factory was going to be usable for the German army, and we were told to sabotage everything. We were liberated by the Russian army, and after about 4 days then of liberation, which was on May 9th, 1945, we then started walking back to Krakow, which took us 11 days.
After living through some of the most unimaginable conditions, once free, many survivors kept the horrors they went through a secret, from neighbors, friends, and even family.
Oh, I didn't talk about it at all. I went to school, I went to college, I went for further degrees, I taught, I lived in a community for 40 years. Nobody in that community knew anything, not even my children knew of my experiences. I was known as being a DP, a displaced person. People knew in the community that I had been born in Europe, but nobody knew that I had been in a concentration camp or done any of that at all. I didn't start talking about it till 1993, when the movie Schindler's List came out.
It is important to note that for years, people didn't talk about the Holocaust. Celina's own children didn't know what she went through. Her biography notes, when her parents opened up about it, they found that people were not interested in their story, and so they stopped talking about it. Celina asked herself, why dredge up these awful memories and discuss them when no one, she thought, could possibly understand them? Celina and many others only found the confidence to share their stories after the movie Schindler's List came out in 1993. So, in choosing to shine a spotlight on Celina's journey, we honor not only her resilience, but also the millions of people who suffered and perished during one of humanity's darkest hours. Through her story, we are reminded of the power of remembrance, of the importance of bearing witness to the past, and of our collective responsibility to ensure that such atrocities are never allowed to happen again. To end off, Celina has one final message.
My message is always do not hate, because hatred is very corrosive. The person you hate, or whatever you hate, has no knowledge of it. The only person that suffers by it is yourself, because you are retaining the anger and everything. Be open to ideas and accept diversity.